The Vrax Dominion arrived in Earth orbit with the quiet certainty of an executioner sharpening a blade. 300 capital ships, each a wedge of polished steel and muted menace, slid into formation above the Pacific. Their hulls drank the sunlight, casting long shadows across the scattered cloud cover. Across the planet, every screen, every device, every radio frequency went dark, then flared back to life with a single transmission. High Lord Zynar's face materialized, angular, pale, eyes like chips of frozen mercury. He spoke in flawless English, his voice a smooth, unhurried boom. People of Earth, you are now a protectorate of the Vrax Dominion. Your governments will disband. Your military assets will be surrendered. Your species will serve. Compliance will be rewarded. Defiance will be erased. A subterranean command center beneath the Swiss Alps, Captain Alara Vance watched the broadcast on a reinforced display. Around her, officers from 24 nations stood in grim silence. The room smelled of recycled air and stale coffee. No one panicked. No one wept. They had drilled for this or something like it for generations. The transmission ended and the UN Secretary-General, a weathered woman named Okonkwo, pressed a button on her console. Her reply went out on the same channel, voice even. Earth declines your offer. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Zynar's expression flickered, amusement perhaps. He gestured to his tactical officer. 9 seconds later, Tokyo vanished in a pillar of white fire. The visual feed showed the city's skyline simply ceasing to exist, replaced by a seething crater that glittered with molten glass. 60 million lives blinked out between one heartbeat and the next. Alara's jaw tightened. She had family in Yokohama. She forced her mind into tactical channels, blocking the grief with cold analysis. The Vrax weapon was not a simple kinetic impactor. It was a directed energy lance, clean and horrifyingly efficient. Their intelligence had underestimated Dominion technology by at least 2 orders of magnitude. Hold position, Okonkwo ordered, her voice carrying steel. No counterlaunch, we wait. Zynar's voice returned, still serene. You have witnessed our sincerity. You have 1 orbital cycle to broadcast unconditional surrender, or we will erase another city. Then another. Until your world is a graveyard, filled the bunker. Alara's console pinged with a priority alert from the lunar monitoring array. She frowned and tapped the screen. The moon was emitting a low-frequency pulse, a rhythmic thrumming that registered across a spectrum no human instrument had ever used. It wasn't seismic, it was structured. A signal, she routed it to Okonkwo's station. The Secretary-General studied the waveform and a strange, knowing smile touched her lips. It's time, she murmured. Alara opened her mouth to ask what she meant, but another officer spoke first. Ma'am, multiple dormant satellites are reactivating across the system. Deep space platforms, some dating back to the early space age. They're transmitting a handshake protocol. Earth. The Vrax fleet's sensor arrays lit up with warnings. A science officer aboard the flagship, a Twitchy being named Threx, approached Zynar with obvious reluctance. High Lord, the planet's natural satellite is emitting a signal that matches no known geological phenomenon. It appears to be artificial. Zynar turned his frozen eyes on the officer. Impossible. This species achieved orbital flight less than 200 cycles ago. They have no significant off-world infrastructure. Nevertheless, the signal is there, and it's growing stronger. It appears to be waking something. High Lord stared at the holographic display of Earth and its silver companion. The moon pulsed gently, a heartbeat in the void. He felt a sensation he had not experienced in decades, uncertainty. He crushed it instantly. Bring the main battery online. If they will not kneel, we will carve the lesson into their continents. Deep within the Alps bunker, Alara Vance received a new set of orders transmitted directly to her neural interface. Her eyes widened as she read the authorization codes, the coordinates, the operational name. She was no longer a captain in the United Earth Defense Force. She was an inheritor, and the moon was about to show the galaxy exactly what humanity had been hiding beneath its pale, scarred surface. The lunar crust split along ancient seams with a groan that vibrated through the fabric of spacetime. Seismographs across Earth registered the event as a magnitude 12 earthquake that somehow did not disturb a single tectonic plate. On the moon's sunward face, a massive chasm yawned open, 60 kilometers wide and glowing with internal light. From that chasm rose a forest of spires, each one a kinetic accelerator barrel wrapped in cooling veins. The moon, humanity's silent guardian for uncounted millennia, shed its camouflage. The entire satellite was a hollow fortress, its interior a honeycomb of weapon platforms, hangar bays, and command centers that had waited in cold sleep for this precise moment. High Lord Zynar watched the transformation on his flagship's main viewer. His tactical officer's voice rose in alarm. Energy signatures matching ancient human designs, High Lord. These are not primitive constructs. These are First Empire relics. The words hit Zynar like a physical blow. First Empire. The nightmare whispered in Vrak's nurseries, the boogeyman their ancestors had overthrown after centuries of subjugation. The humans were supposed to be extinct, their legacy wiped clean. Yet here in a backwater system, the old monsters were waking. All ships, evasive. The command came too late. The lunar batteries spoke with silent, invisible fury. Slugs the size of city blocks accelerated to relativistic speeds in the space of a heartbeat. They struck the Vrak's formation without warning, punching through shields designed to repel energy weapons, not pure kinetic annihilation. 3 capital ships simply disintegrated, their atoms scattered into a glittering cloud. 4 more reeled with catastrophic damage, spilling atmosphere and crew. Captain Alara Vance was already en route. A suborbital shuttle screamed across the Atlantic, carrying her and a hand-picked team of operatives toward a rendezvous point in the Sea of Tranquility. The shuttle's interior was cramped and dark, lit only by the glow of helmet displays. Alara's second-in-command, a wiry demolitions expert named Sergeant Malik, leaned close. "You want to tell me why we're flying into a war zone that just popped out of a fairy tale?" Alara pulled up a schematic on her wrist display. "Because the fairy tale is real. The moon base, designation Argus, has been dormant since before recorded history. My orders are to reactivate its central command nexus and coordinate the defense." "How do you know how to do that?" She met his gaze. "Because the knowledge was passed down. My family has been part of the Watcher program for 93 generations. I was trained for this before I could walk." Malik absorbed that in silence. The shuttle shuddered as it passed through the lunar base's atmospheric containment field and descended into the chasm. Alara saw structures that defied comprehension, gantries stretching into darkness, rows of mothballed warships gleaming with frost, vast chambers filled with hibernating war machines. This was not a base. It was a resurrection. On the Vrak's flagship, Zynar recovered his composure. The loss of ships was infuriating, but he had not become High Lord by panicking. "All vessels, withdraw to the outer system and regroup. Launch a full planetary bombardment from standoff range. I want their cities turned to ash before they can deploy any more hidden weapons." A salvo of plasma torpedoes streaked toward Earth, each one capable of vaporizing a metropolitan area. They crossed the lunar orbit and hit nothing. A shimmering dome of azure light flared into visibility around the planet, absorbing the impacts with indifferent ease. The energy dissipated across the barrier in rippling waves, leaving the surface untouched. Threx, the science officer, stared at his instruments in disbelief. "High Lord, the shield signature is consistent with Type 7 barrier technology. That's several tiers above our own defensive systems. The humans did not develop this recently. This shield was built before our empire existed." Zynar said nothing. The weight of history pressed down on him. The Vrak's dominion had conquered 100 species, crushed rebellions, erased civilizations. They had come to Earth expecting a quick harvest of labor and resources. Instead, they had kicked open a tomb and found the original owners still very much alive. Alara's boots touched the deck of Argus Command. Ancient displays flickered to life as she approached, greeting her with symbols that predated Sumerian cuneiform. A holographic interface materialized, and a voice spoke in a language that was both alien and achingly familiar, like a half-remembered lullaby. "Welcome, inheritor. The enemy has been identified as Vrak's ascendancy, descendant of the traitor legions. Shall we begin the reclamation?" Alara placed her hand on the console. "Begin." Across the solar system, on moons and asteroids and derelict stations, engines that had not fired in 100,000 years began to hum. The Vrak's dreadnought Solrender drifted in high orbit, its spine broken by a lunar kinetic round. Emergency lights cast a dying orange glow through corridors littered with corpses and twisted metal. Ilara's team moved through the wreckage in vacuum-rated combat armor, magnetic boots clicking against the deck. Their objective was the ship's data core, the Dominion's intelligence on human history, stored in a vault deep within the engineering section. Sergeant Malik took point, his plasma rifle sweeping for threats. "Creepy Cap, this ship is a mausoleum." "Focused," Ilara replied. "The core is 3 decks down. We have 12 minutes before Dominion reinforcements arrive." They encountered scattered resistance. Vrak's soldiers in pressurized carapace armor, their 4-jointed limbs moving with insectal precision. The firefights were brief and brutal. Human reflex augmentation and adaptive camouflage gave Ilara's team an edge that the Vraks clearly did not anticipate. The Dominion troops fought with the desperation of creatures confronting a myth made flesh. The data core chamber was a spherical room lined with crystalline storage matrices. Ilara jacked her wrist interface into the access port and began the download. What she found made her blood run colder than the void outside. The records were fragmented, censored, but the truth was unmistakable. Humanity had not evolved on Earth. Earth was a sanctuary, a seed world prepared by an ancient human civilization that had spanned the galaxy. That civilization, known in Vrak's texts only as the Architects, had been the dominant power for 200,000 years. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were builders, teachers, guardians, but their very success bred resentment. The Vraks had been one of many client species, uplifted and nurtured. Over millennia, they grew envious and afraid. They formed a coalition of subject races, the Traitor Legions, and launched a coordinated uprising. The war lasted 10,000 years. The Architects, unwilling to annihilate their own creations, retreated. They ceded sanctuary worlds, erased their presence from the galactic record, and vanished. Earth was the last and most carefully hidden of these refuges. Its inhabitants were genetically conditioned to forget, to start anew, to grow strong in isolation until the signal awakened them. Ilara's heart pounded. Her entire existence, everyone she had ever known, every war and triumph and tragedy in human history, it was all a chrysalis, and the butterfly was about to emerge. She transmitted a compressed data burst to Argus Command, and from there to every human military node on Earth. Her voice, when she spoke, carried an authority she had not known she possessed. "This is Captain Ilara Vance, acting inheritor of the first human empire. The enemy we face today is the same enemy that betrayed our ancestors. They thought we were gone. They thought they could finish the job. They were wrong. We remember." The words propagated across the planet. In the Gobi Desert, the sands parted to reveal a subterranean shipyard. In the Andes, a mountain split open, disgorging a sleek cruiser that had slept beneath granite. In the Atlantic, a vast carrier rose from the abyssal plain, shedding water and sediment like a leviathan waking from a dream. Hundreds of ships, thousands of fighters, millions of dormant war drones, all responding to the signal. High Lord Zynar watched the sensor feeds in mounting horror. The human fleet was not a ragtag collection of hastily assembled vessels. It was a war machine that had been waiting, preserved, maintained by automated systems for eons. The tactical computer estimated their combined tonnage at 3 times the Dominion's invasion force, and more ships were still surfacing. "Recall all expeditionary fleets," Zynar ordered. "Send a priority message to the Imperial Corps. Inform them that the Architects have returned." His communications officer hesitated. "High Lord, if we transmit that, it will cause panic across the Dominion." "The subject worlds, do it. Better panic than extinction." Message raced through wormhole relays toward the galactic core, but it would take days to reach the Vrak's capital. By then, Zynar knew the battle might already be decided. He stared at the holographic display of Earth, a blue jewel wrapped in its unbreakable shield, and felt the cold weight of his own history pressing down. The Architects had been merciful once. He doubted they would make the same mistake again. Alara stood on the command deck of the resurrected carrier Aegis, watching her crew take their stations. Malik was beside her, his face a mask of professional calm. "So, Cap, we're the heirs of a galaxy-spanning empire. What's our first move?" She brought up a tactical display of the solar system. The Vrax fleet was regrouping near Jupiter, attempting to establish a defensive perimeter. Red icons flickered around Europa, where the Dominion had deployed mining platforms to refuel. "We hit them where they're vulnerable," Alara said. "Europa. Then we push them out of the system and follow them home. Then we find out who else was part of the betrayal, and we make sure they never threaten us again." Aegis and its battle group ignited their main drives and surged toward the outer planets, leaving behind a world that was no longer a cradle but a launching pad. The worst decision in galactic history was only just beginning to exact its price. The battle for the solar system unfolded across 8 astronomical units of cold vacuum and searing plasma. Human warships, freshly awakened and crewed by volunteers who had trained their whole lives for a war they never fully understood, engaged the Vrax at Jupiter. The gas giant's magnetic field rippled with the backscatter of broadside exchanges. Europa was the first objective. The icy moon's surface cracked open under sustained bombardment, revealing the shipyard beneath, a vast complex of fabrication bays and dry docks that had been building human cruisers for millennia, working slowly, patiently, in the dark. The Vrax had established a forward operating base there, and they fought to hold it with the tenacity of cornered predators. For 16 hours, the ice ran molten with spilled reactor coolant and alien blood. Alara led the boarding action personally. Her target was not the shipyard command center but a Vrax intelligence vessel docked in a secondary berth. The Soulrender Data Core had hinted at a deeper network of Dominion secrets, and this ship, the Whisper of Dominion, was the key. She and Malik breached the airlock with shaped charges and stormed the interior, leaving a trail of stunned or terminated Vrax defenders. The Whisper's bridge was a circular chamber bathed in amber light. Vrax officers scrambled for weapons, but Alara's team cut them down with precise bursts. She found the ship's commander, a female Vrax with ceremonial scarring on her faceplate, cowering behind her command throne. "You're monsters," the Vrax hissed in broken English. "The old text said you were merciful. You were teachers." Alara grabbed the alien by her collar and hauled her upright. The teachers came back and found their students had burned the school. "What did you expect, a gold star?" She shoved the commander toward Malik and accessed the ship's data logs. The Whisper was a courier vessel, carrying sealed orders from the Vrax Emperor himself. The encryption was complex, but human code-breaking algorithms, evolved over 100 millennia, sliced through it in seconds. The orders detailed a contingency plan. If the architects were confirmed active, the Dominion was to deploy a singularity bomb and collapse the entire solar system into a micro-black hole. Alara's blood chilled. A singularity bomb was not a weapon of conquest. It was a weapon of annihilation designed to erase evidence. The Vrax were not just fighting a war. They were trying to cover up their original crime. She opened a channel to the Aegis. "I need immediate extraction. And get me a direct line to High Lord Zynar's flagship. We have a situation." Response was interrupted by a system-wide alert. A Vrax dreadnought, the Eternal Judgment, had broken formation and was accelerating toward the inner system on a suicide trajectory. Its cargo, a singularity bomb. Zynar, cornered and desperate, had decided that if he could not conquer Earth, he would unmake it. Alara's shuttle screamed away from the Whisper just as the Vrax courier self-destructed behind her, a final act of spite from its dying commander. The Eternal Judgment was already past Mars, its engines redlining as it pushed toward Earth's shield perimeter. Human ships pursued, but the dreadnought's speed was augmented by a gravitational slingshot around the sun. It would reach Earth in 22 minutes. On the Aegis's bridge, Alara stared at the tactical plot. The singularity bomb, once detonated, would create an event horizon roughly the diameter of Neptune's orbit. Nothing inside would survive. The shield might delay it for seconds, but the gravitational shear would tear Earth apart. Options, she snapped. Her tactical officer, a young man named Ruiz, shook his head. We can't intercept in time with conventional weapons. The dreadnought's shields are too strong for a kinetic strike from this angle. Ilara's mind raced. Then she remembered something from the Argus archives, a prototype weapon, untested, deemed too dangerous even for the First Empire. A resonance cascade warhead that disrupted the strong nuclear force within a target's hull, turning its own mass into a bomb. It was stored in a vault on Titan. Set course for Titan maximum burn. We're going to arm a ghost. Aegis plunged toward Saturn's largest moon while the clock ticked down. 22 minutes. 20 minutes. 18. Ilara's fingers flew across the command interface, authorizing the vault's opening sequence. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her, the lives of billions suspended in the silence between heartbeats. She thought of Tokyo, of Yokohama, of the faces she would never see again. She would not let the Vrax take more. The Titan vault opened. The weapon, code-named Unmaker, was loaded into the Aegis's launch tube. 15 minutes. Ilara targeted the Eternal Judgment and fired the Unmaker, crossed the distance between Titan and Mars in a blur of distorted spacetime. It struck the Eternal Judgment amidships and detonated not with fire but with a ripple of wrongness. The Vrax dreadnought's atomic structure rebelled against itself. Protons and neutrons forgot their bonds. The ship came apart in a cascade of transmutation, iron becoming hydrogen, carbon becoming helium, every element shedding its identity. The singularity bomb, its containment field faltering, collapsed inward and fizzled into a burst of hard radiation. No black hole, no apocalypse, just a brief, silent flare that painted the inner system with auroras. Zynar, aboard his flagship near Jupiter's shadow, watched the sensor feed with an expression that might have been admiration if it weren't so deeply terrified. He had thrown everything at these creatures, and they had countered every move with technology that belonged to legend. He was not fighting a primitive world. He was fighting the ghost of the empire that had built the stars. His communications array chimed. An incoming transmission, unencrypted, broadcast on all frequencies. A woman's voice, calm and edged with something ancient. High Lord Zynar, this is Inheritor Ilara Vance. Your singularity bomb has been neutralized. Your fleet is surrounded. Your reinforcements are weeks away. Surrender now, and I will guarantee the safety of your remaining crews. Continue this fight, and I will erase your ships from existence and leave your name as a curse in every Vrax nursery for the next 1,000 generations. You have 60 seconds. Zynar's bridge crew stared at him. The tactical officer's hands trembled. The science officer, Threx, had already removed his command helmet, a gesture of capitulation. Zynar saw the truth in their eyes. The Dominion's greatest strength had always been its aura of inevitability. That aura was gone, shattered by lunar batteries, planetary shields, and a single human who spoke with the authority of a resurrected god. He opened the channel. This is High Lord Zynar. The Vrax Dominion fleet surrenders unconditionally. Please transmit terms. Across the system, Vrax warships powered down their weapons and vented their engines. Human boarding parties moved in to secure the vessels. Ilara watched the flood of surrender signals populate her tactical display and allowed herself a single breath of relief. Then she contacted Okonkwo on Earth. Madam Secretary General, the immediate threat is contained. I need authorization to proceed with Phase 2. Okonkwo's image appeared, weary but resolute. You're certain about what you found in the Dominion records? Yes. The Vrax were not acting alone when they destroyed the First Empire. They had help from another power, something called the Shroud. It's still out there in the galactic core. And if the Vrax's message reached them, they're already aware we've returned. A long silence. Then Okonkwo nodded. Authorization granted. Take the fight to them. Humanity will not spend another 100,000 years hiding. Next 72 hours were a blur of activity. Human engineers worked alongside Vrax prisoners to repair captured vessels and integrate them into the fleet. Zynar, under guard, provided critical intelligence, wormhole coordinates, defense networks, the political fault lines within the Dominion. He seemed almost eager to cooperate, as if the return of the architects had freed him from some unspoken burden. The Shroud are not like us. he explained to Alara during a debriefing. They are not like you. They are not even truly alive in the way we understand. They are Gestalt consciousness, billions of minds woven into a single will. When they sided with the traitor legions, they did so because they saw the First Empire as an obstacle to their unification of all sentient life. They wanted to absorb humanity. They still do. Alara studied him. Why are you helping us? Zynar's frozen eyes thawed just slightly. Because my people have lived under the Shroud's shadow for eons. We were their weapons, their enforcers. We feared them more than we ever feared you. If you can break them, then perhaps we can be free. She did not trust him completely, but she believed his fear. The human armada assembled at the edge of the solar system near the orbit of Pluto. 500 ships, a mix of ancient vessels and newly constructed craft, crewed by volunteers from every nation on Earth. On the bridge of the Aegis, Alara addressed the fleet. We are the inheritors of something vast and terrible and beautiful. Our ancestors were builders. They made mistakes. They trusted too much. They retreated too far. We are not going to repeat those mistakes. We are going to the heart of the Dominion. We are going to find the Shroud. And we are going to end the threat that has hung over us since before our species learned to write. This is our birthright. This is our duty. Engage wormhole drives. The fleet surged forward, punching through the fabric of space into a corridor of twisted light. Behind them, Earth shone blue and serene, its scars already healing. Ahead lay the unknown and the reckoning. The wormhole disgorged the human fleet into the Vrax home system with a flash of displaced radiation. The capital world, Craxus, hung in the void like a wound, a rust-red sphere veined with city lights and orbital fortresses. The system was heavily defended, but the defenses were designed to repel external threats, not an armada that had captured Dominion clearance codes from a surrendered High Lord. Alara's fleet bypassed the outer sensor nets using Zynar's codes, appearing deep inside the defensive perimeter before the Vrax High Command could react. The element of surprise was total. Human cruisers crippled the primary shipyards in the first salvo while fighter wings swarmed the orbital platforms, disabling rather than destroying. The goal was not annihilation. The goal was liberation. On the Aegis's main viewer, a broadcast from the Vrax Emperor played on a loop. The ruler, a withered creature draped in ceremonial armor, ranted about architect demons and demanded his subjects fight to the last. But Alara's intelligence teams had been busy. Intercepted communications showed widespread unrest across Dominion territory. Slave worlds were rising. Client species were defecting. The Vrax Empire, built on fear, was crumbling. Alara opened a channel to every frequency in the Craxus system. Her voice, translated into a dozen languages, echoed across the planet below. People of the Vrax Dominion, I am Inheritor Alara Vance of the restored human commonwealth. Your leaders have lied to you. They told you the architects were extinct. They told you the Shroud was your ally. The truth is that your empire was built on a betrayal, and the Shroud sees you as tools, not partners. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to break the chains that bind you, chains forged by your own rulers. Stand down. Open your ports. Fight with us and we will build something new. Followed. Then one by one the orbital fortresses began to lower their shields. Planetary defense batteries went dark. On the streets of the Vrax capital, crowds gathered not to resist but to watch the skis with something that might have been hope. Zynar, confined to quarters on the Aegis, listened to the broadcast and closed his eyes. His empire, his legacy, dissolving into static, yet beneath the grief, a flicker of relief. He had spent his life serving a lie. Perhaps in defeat, he had found something truer. Alara led the ground assault on the Imperial Palace. Her team, reinforced by Vrax defectors and liberated slave soldiers, fought through corridors adorned with murals depicting the architects as horned monsters. The art was propaganda, she realized, a deliberate rewriting of history to justify genocide. The irony was bitter. The Vrax had feared humanity so deeply they had turned their saviors into demons. The Emperor's throne room was a vast chamber of black marble and flickering braziers. The Emperor himself stood before his throne, a plasma scepter in his clawed hands. His guards lay unconscious or dead in the hallway behind Alara's team. You are too late, the Emperor spat. The shroud has already been summoned. They are coming. You will all be absorbed into the great unity. Alara stepped forward, her weapon lowered. Where are the shroud's home systems? Tell me, and I will spare your life. The Emperor laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You think I fear death? The shroud will consume you. They will unmake your individuality, your history, your very souls. There is no victory against them. Before she could respond, a tremor shook the palace. A new alert screamed across the fleet's network, multiple contacts emerging from phase space directly above Craxus. The shroud had arrived. Their ships were not made of metal. They were crystalline lattices of living information, phasing in and out of tangible reality. They attacked without warning, without communication, their weapons unraveling the molecular bonds of both Vrax and human vessels alike. The civil war, the liberation, the careful strategy, all of it was swallowed by the sudden, screaming chaos of a new war. Alara grabbed the Emperor and hauled him toward the extraction point. You're coming with us. You're going to watch us beat them. Roof of the palace collapsed as a shroud beam swept overhead, erasing stone and steel. Alara dove into the shuttle, the Emperor a dead weight in her grip. As the hatch sealed, she looked back at the burning capital and the alien sky full of nightmares. The real fight had just begun. The shroud fleet numbered in the thousands, each vessel a crystalline shard of Gestalt consciousness. They did not maneuver like traditional ships. They flowed, adapting their formations to exploit every weakness in the human and Vrax defenses. For 6 hours, the space above Craxus became a slaughterhouse. Human shields held against the unraveling beams, but only just. Vrax ships, less advanced, died by the score. Alara stood on the Aegis's bridge, her uniform scorched, her eyes hollow. She had lost Malik during the extraction. A piece of debris had crushed his evac pod. She had lost Ruiz, the tactical officer, when a shroud beam sheared off the starboard nacelle. The faces of the dead pressed against her thoughts, but she refused to let them break her. We've analyzed their attack patterns, a surviving science officer reported, her voice raw. The shroud ships are linked by a quantum entanglement network. They think and act as a single entity. If we can disrupt that link even momentarily, their coordination will collapse. Alara remembered the Argus archives. There was a weapon, theoretical but never deployed, designed for exactly this scenario. A quantum disruption field that could sever entanglement bonds. The prototype existed, stored in the Aegis's deepest vault, a device so dangerous its creators had locked it away, fearing it might damage the fabric of consciousness itself. Bring it online, she ordered. We'll need a delivery system, a boarding action. Get me a strike team and a shuttle. The remnants of her crew stared at her. Boarding a shroud vessel was suicidal. The interior was not a physical space but a dreamscape of shared memory where individuality dissolved. Anyone who entered risked losing themselves. Captain, with respect, you'll never come back, the science officer said. Then I'll make sure the weapon works before I go. Prep the team. Later, Alara and 4 volunteers, 2 humans, a Vrax defector, and a liberated slave from a species she did not recognize, boarded a stealth shuttle and launched toward the largest shroud command vessel. The Aegis provided covering fire, drawing the enemy's attention while the shuttle ghosted through the chaos. They breached the crystalline hull and stepped into a realm that defied physics. The interior was a shifting mosaic of memories, faces of absorbed beings, snippets of conversations, echoes of emotions. Alara felt the collective consciousness pressing against her mind, offering unity, offering oblivion. She gritted her teeth and pushed forward, dragging the disruption device behind her. At the heart of the vessel she found the Nexus, a pulsing core of entangled light. The voices of trillions whispered in her skull, a chorus of longing and despair. The shroud was not evil, she realized. It was lonely. It had sought to unify all life because it believed individuality was suffering. It had destroyed the First Empire not out of malice but out of a twisted form of compassion. I'm sorry, she whispered and activated the device. The disruption field expanded in a sphere of silence. The entanglement bond snapped. For a shattering moment, every consciousness within the shroud was ripped apart from the Gestalt and thrust back into isolated awareness. Trillions of voices screamed, then fell silent. The crystalline lattice shivered and began to crack. Alara felt the vessel dying around her. She grabbed her team and fled, dragging the Vrax defector when his legs gave out. They reached the shuttle just as the Shroud command vessel imploded into a cloud of inert dust. Across the fleet, the effect cascaded. Cut off from the central intelligence, the Shroud ships drifted, confused, their crews, individuals now panicking. Some self-destructed. Others simply stopped fighting and broadcast surrender. The battle was over. Alara returned to the Aegis and stared at the debris field where the Shroud fleet had been. The cost had been staggering. The human armada had lost 40% of its ships. The Vrax had fared worse. But the Shroud threat was broken. The Gestalt had scattered, its constituent minds now free to reclaim their identities. It would take generations for them to rebuild, and they would not return as conquerors. Months later, on a liberated world orbiting a star whose name she still struggled to pronounce, Alara stood before a gathering of representatives from 37 species. Former slave races, former Dominion member worlds, even a delegation from the newborn Vrax provisional government. They had come to hear what the terrifying architects intended to do now that they had shattered 2 empires. She spoke into a microphone that broadcast across the galaxy. My ancestors built an empire of knowledge and guidance, and it was destroyed by fear. I will not rebuild that empire. Instead, we offer a commonwealth, a voluntary union of worlds bound by mutual defense and shared prosperity. No masters, no slaves, no hidden weapons waiting to be unleashed. We will be guardians, not tyrants. The worst decision in galactic history was attacking Earth, not because we are invincible, but because we remember what it costs to lose everything. We will not inflict that cost on others, but we will ensure that no one ever inflicts it again. The assembly erupted into chaos, debate, argument, hope. Alara stepped back from the podium and looked out the viewport. Beyond the atmosphere, human patrol ships traced gentle arcs against the stars. On the surface below, a child of the liberated species pointed upward, and her mother lifted her onto her shoulders so she could see. The sleeping giant had awakened, and it had chosen, against all expectation, to be kind.